fear is ruling in your life, then you are not living. You have to have that freedom. Some of you are like, well, how do I do that? Just let it go. It is what it is. But what if I die? Then you die. What if I get paralyzed? Then you get paralyzed. What if this happens? Then it happens. My question would be, what if it doesn't happen and you missed out on all these things because all you did was panic and be afraid?
Thank you, Rabbi.
All right.
It was really good. Appreciate it. Okay, I have a couple of questions. At the beginning, you were talking about, well, it wasn't at the beginning. It was in the middle of your talk. You were talking about how we can be unstable. You know, when you were talking with James, like you're going from one to another, to another, to another, right? Okay, so my question is, you know, you see people who are very successful in life. Like if you go back to, I mean, there's so many to mention, but they try something, it doesn't work. They try something else, it doesn't work. You know, even with the level up class, you're saying, you know, there's going to be success, and then maybe some fail, and then an S and an F. You know what I'm saying? So how do you distinguish between doing that with perseverance and trying to find something that will work to going back and forth or going in different directions?
There's a very simple difference here, okay? In most of the things you're referring to, there is a measurable result. In other words, I tried something to fix my finances and it either worked or it didn't. I tried something to work on my relationship, either it worked or it didn't. You know what I'm saying? There's measurable results. Okay, when people are bouncing around with doctrinal understandings and those kind of things, there's not always a measurable result, except that there's confusion and chaos that filters out to the rest of their family or whatever. Let's say I've seen this with a family where the husband just could not make up his mind. He was going to a church, then he was going to a Messianic, then he was going back to a church, he was not stable. He never made a choice, okay? Sometimes even making a choice, even the wrong choice, at least it's not unstable. The unstable are vacillating back and forth. So if you try something, some of you have done this. You went to a church, realized this wasn't working, so you went to a different church. Looking for something and it wasn't there, then you look for another one. That's not being unstable. People might claim that that is, but if you have good reason saying, I went there looking for this and it wasn't there, or I found this that's I know is not right, so I'm leaving, that's not unstable. That's you seeking something and not finding it yet, okay? But the unstable means they're floating back and forth. They believe this, then they believe this, but then they go back and believe this, then they go back, and you have no idea where they stand because they're too easily pushed around, usually by whoever the strongest influence is standing in front of them, okay? And so that's, you know, one of those shows that, you know, it's unstable, okay, the unstable. So it's really tossed around as opposed to making a choice. So what you're describing is somebody that tries something. Okay, I did that with careers at one point. I was trying something, it didn't work. I quickly enough changed and went and tried another thing, quickly enough. That wasn't unstable. My finances at that point were a little unstable because I was changing jobs, but I changed them for very concrete reasons, okay? And it never went backwards, back to something I already realized doesn't work, okay? But the unstable is going to be going back and forth between some things, and so they'll return to something, they'll leave it again, and return again, and leave it again. So there's no commitment level. Make a decision, commit to it, right? Okay, so changing my mind about a place, not so much changing, realizing it's not accomplishing what I wanted, and then changing is a commitment, it's a decision. The people being described in that verse are not making decisions. They're being tossed around and influenced by whoever's in front of them. You are right. Okay, you are right, right? Don't tell me you haven't had a problem with somebody who's a friend or a family member that depending on, well, you know, when mom said it, you did this, but then all of a sudden when our sister or brother said it, then you listen to them, and you know that they're just being pushed around by whoever the strongest voice is in the room, that they have not made a decision on their own. Do you see what I'm saying? In other words, the people tossed around are influenced. Do you understand the difference? I can get information. Let's say I was one of you and I came to me, right? I came to whoever the leader was and asked a question. I'm going to then now take that information and go ahead and run with it or not, but not because I was influenced, but because of how I trust or don't trust that information coming from that person. However, if I then were to go to somebody else and get a different answer, and then depending if I'm just someone who's influenced or tossed about, whichever has the strongest push, that's the one I'm going to be listening to, because they're influencing me. You've all seen that. Wait a minute, you and I were just talking about that and you agreed with me, and then all of a sudden you talk to this one and now you disagree with me because that person intimidated you. Anybody ever have that happen? Hundreds of times? And you realize they're just influenced. I was like, wait a minute, you were clear that you disagreed with this, this, and this. Oh, well, I was scared of them. That's what we're talking about, okay? A person who makes a decision, nobody's going to influence them. So this is for the weak ones who are just pushed around by influencers that you're choosing to allow in your life. And so whoever's the strongest influence is the one that pushes you around. And then you don't know where you stand. I've seen families fall apart, marriages fall apart because the husband especially never took a position. And so the family had no idea what he stood for, or where they were all going, and where the direction was. And that's going to be very hard, again, for the ship being tossed all over the place. And then everybody in the ship goes, but where are we going? The wind's just blowing us around. Are we going anywhere? Okay?
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you,
Good.
Rabbi. Question about Revelation 3:11. You're saying, see, I am coming speedily, hold what you have, but no one take your crown. But is it somebody else taking our crown, or is us giving it up because we're not really being ardent and following? Can you help me with that, please? Thank you.
Okay, so this is, again, the idea of the endure and receive a crown. Look, when he says, let no one steal your crown, in other words, don't let them influence you so that you lose your crown. Okay? Again, the same idea of influence. You want, talk to the Christian part of the audience, you want a relationship with the Father and the Son. But your crown is being stolen by those telling you that the vehicle that helps with that relationship, the law, they tell you is done away with. They tell you it's no good. They tell you it was the problem. They tell you it was too hard. Nobody could do it. They tell you all these things that are not true. That's stealing your crown from you. So it's about influence. So it's not that someone's going to walk over and take your crown that you could have had. They're going to basically convince you not to do the things that put the crown on your head. All right, go ahead.
Okay. And then I know a lot of this was about fear. If we fear him, we won't fear any.
Everything is about fear, okay? Versus belief, right? I've said this so many times, the entire book is about the battle between trust and belief and fear and doubt, okay? Everything comes down to those two things. Everything.
Thank you. So there are some, I know fear is irrational. Oh, that's a definition, right? But I do think that there is some type of fear that can be more over the top, like more of something specific that can actually has a lot more energy in people, right? In everybody, individually, different things, different fears. We can have different fears. So yesterday, we were talking with the ladies, and we were something specific, for instance, a phobia, right? We were just talking for some reason. Some people were afraid of driving, whatever, past experiences. So I was thinking, and I've always thought in the past too, that phobias usually are displaced fears, that something happened early on that brought in fear, and maybe that memory was suppressed or repressed or whatever, and then somehow that fear is coming up in a different aspect in your life, I guess. So I guess I wanted to know your thoughts about it. Obviously, we have to take charge of it's our responsibility to work on those areas in our lives. But is it only spiritual, like not trusting? I have heard the teaching of fear of Yahweh many times. I need to go back to it probably. But is it only spiritually that we're not trusting him, or could it also be something more of at an emotional level? Thank you.
No, it's always at an emotional level. Okay, if your emotions are challenged, you're not going to trust, whether it's him, whether it's a husband or wife or friend, whatever. Your trust issues are going to be emotional. Okay. Now, when it comes to things like phobias and these fears, you've heard me say this many, many times, reality fixes most things. So usually what will fix a phobia and other things is getting you to the place, again, where you have ears to hear. In other words, you can receive realities, which is why they'll do something like they'll take someone who has a fear of snakes and give them a snake that's not poisonous and whatever, get them to hold it and get over their fear, okay? I mean, I've dealt with people recently with a fear of getting in a car wreck or something, right? And I'm like, well, first of all, millions of people every day drive and they don't get killed in car wrecks. Okay, but that's a reality, but I'm afraid I'm gonna get in a car wreck. Well, you might. People do, very few of them, but there's so many other ways you can get hurt, killed, and other things can happen to you. But the odds, reality of it, right? And I was dealing with someone who was afraid of long distance, traveling. Okay, and again, I'm not mentioning anybody, so if they're watching, I'm not mentioning you. Okay, but the thing is, I said, but wait a minute. I said, but do you drive locally? They were like, because using your example is going to help people, so it'd be a blessing. And they said, yeah, I do. I said, do you know that most accidents happen within a few miles of your house? So you're more likely to get hurt doing what you're already doing than what you're afraid of. In other words, bringing reality in. And the person, it really helped them. Because your perspective, because of emotion, because of the delusion bubble, gets skewed. So it's no longer reality. You're not getting reality properly anymore. It's a skewed version of reality, okay? And so you could be afraid of a dog. You could be afraid of airplanes. There are people that won't get on an airplane. You know what? Airplanes crash. Very rarely. When you consider how many people get in them and they don't crash, all right? But yet, there are people that then have this irrational fear. And so then you have, what I say for leverage is, do the things I teach you in the Level Up class. One of the things I say in the Level Up class, if you have a goal to do something, one of the things you have to do to reach that goal is realize that there is a cost to not reaching the goal. So I want, as leverage, to have you understand, what is it costing me to hold on to this fear? What are you not getting to do or accomplish because of a fear? And let that maybe be stronger emotion than the thing that you're afraid of, okay? Because maybe you want to come to a feast here in Cleveland, but you got to fly, but you're afraid of planes. I don't know. You're missing out on being here. You're missing out on whatever you're missing out on. But I'm afraid of a plane crashing. They don't usually. I mean, when a plane crashes, it makes the news. You know why? Because it almost never happens. So it's a big deal when it rarely does happen. But then again, you get in a car. That happens all the time to people. But even then, most people get in a car accident and don't get killed. I've been in several of them. Okay? Anybody get hit and not die? Well, if you did, you wouldn't be here raising your hand. But, I'm just saying is bringing reality in, right? So you have a phobia, because I know the other day we had, and even today, fear of driving in the ice and driving home and everything else. You know what? People drive in the ice all the time. All the time. And I know that it's a little scarier for places that are not used to snow and ice and that kind of thing. And somebody once said, so, well, if it was a Monday, would they not go to work? I said, of course they wouldn't. The work would be closed. Down here, everything would be closed. But you go up to, anywhere north of, say, the Mason-Dixon line, and you go a little bit up into the north, they drive in this stuff all the time. I don't say, well, they got the salting trucks. The salting trucks don't go everywhere. And they drive everywhere. I mean, they never closed my school. All the way from kindergarten, all the way through college, I never had a closed school day. We had blizzards and everything else. They never closed school. Businesses didn't close, okay? I've had people say, well, my kid had to wait online, for the bus for 20 minutes and it was cold. I had to take a bus and 2 subways in the snowstorms and wait for that bus and everything else. And get all the way to a school that was that far away from me, only to have like 15 people show up and sit there bored because they weren't really going to teach class anyway. Because the people that lived across the street didn't even show up. But my mother, teacher that she was, 5th grade teacher, she said, nope, you're going to school. You know. But see, it's a different perspective. They're used to this stuff, we're not. But in reality, people do it all the time. Just be careful and drive slow. It's not that bad. I've done 360s on roads. I've done everything you can imagine, hitting a bad spot. Okay, not because I'm a bad driver, I just hit a bad spot. Okay, and that can happen to anybody. And you know what? Didn't hit anything, didn't hit anybody. It was, you know, it was a little crazy, but it was what it was. That happened to me on the way to, you got to picture this if you only been to the really big cities. So heading towards the toll booths of a bridge, which is like 30 toll booths, right? It's like a big, so the highway opens up to this wide funnel space, right? With all these toll booths. And just as I'm getting to there, I hit something and I start spinning and drifting all the way to the right. And I go through like 4 or 5 lanes of cars, in between cars. Somehow nobody was hitting me, and I didn't hit anybody. And then I finally came to a stop right by the administrative building that's at the edge, at the end of the thing, where they, you know, the people that work there kind of go and have their break room, whatever. So I was over there, and I was like, that was pretty weird. And nothing I could do except sit there spinning, you know. Survived that, okay? And didn't hit anybody. And nothing I could have done about it. I wasn't going super fast or anything. It was slowing down. I was in bad weather and just hit a patch as I was changing lanes to go to the both, because they got the, you know, the pay lane and they got the easy pass lane or whatever. So I was trying to make sure I was in the right lane and just did donuts all the way around. All right? Is what it is. But we can be so paralyzed by a fear. Look, you are going to do many things in life. Some of them were foolishly risky. Some of them would not be as risky as you thought they were. So some of them you thought were terribly risky that weren't. Some of the things you did, you didn't think were risky at all and probably were. Doesn't matter. And one day, you're going to die. But I know people are more afraid of, what if I don't die and I'm just terribly injured and something else happens? Well, that happens to people too. Or they end up with some sort of like a stroke or something, and now they're paralyzed. There's lots of ways you can end up in a handicapped physical position that you're all worried about. But you can find a way to thrive under anything. Just stop being afraid. Live. Okay? You're a slave to that fear. We talked about at the beginning of the teaching. Stop being a slave to fear. It could be fear of death. It could be fear of anything. Okay? Stop being afraid. Don't be reckless. We got accused of being reckless when we were open during COVID. We got accused of being reckless when we were open during some snowstorms. We're open. You don't have to come. You can stay home. I told everybody that last night. If you feel like you're not comfortable in whatever the driving is, stay home. Look, if you're not used to driving this stuff, it could be a little bit challenging, okay? On my way here, coming out of my subdivision, there's a slight hill up and then slight hill down. As I'm going down the slight hill down, there's a guy facing up on the other side, and his car's sliding backwards. And I'm driving past him, just hoping, just don't turn a little bit so that you don't nose into me. Just keep sliding straight backwards, you're fine, okay? But his car was not going up, it was sliding. You know, but I've had all of that, you've all had that. Look, and I've had to dig out of spots and put wood under tires and other things you had to do to just get out of a parking spot in New York or whatever. I mean, it's tough to, you know, you have to have things to help get you out of a spot because there's nothing but ice under your tires and you can't get out of a parking spot. I know some of you in the South find it hard to believe because you don't ever park on the street anyway. So you have no idea what I'm talking about. In New York, everybody who has a house has a garage and nobody ever puts their car in it. That's where they store all their junk. My houses that I've always lived in all my life in New York always had garages. Never once did I see a car in one. Okay? That's where the junk went. That was your junk storage. Living in your tiny house that you lived in, you needed a storage unit, right? So that was your garage. So you always had to, worry about being stuck on snow. So we're like, well, we don't have any plows. You know what the plows do in New York when they go down your block? They pile 4 feet of snow next to your car. Now you can't get anywhere because you're snowed in. Because the plow goes right down your road and your car's sitting right on the side of the street and the plow's pushing the snow into walls left and right of the plow up against the wall of your car. You can't even get in the car without shoveling it out. And you guys are like, well, we had a half an inch of powder. I'm not mocking that. I'm tempted to, but I'm not. Because I get it. It's got to be different for you guys. I grew up in this stuff, okay? So this is different. But, when it's called the snowpocalypse, jokingly but not so jokingly, and everything closes here. Look, we stopped the oneg last week, right? We didn't have oneg. So I decided with a few people we were just going to try and go out and eat at like 7 o'clock, right? So it's after sundown and everything else, and everything was closed. I was like, seriously? Why is everything closed? But now, it wasn't everything, because apparently we found that some people found some place that was open, but the places we went to, we tried 3 places, they were all closed. I'm like, oh my gosh. But it is what it is. It's where we are. But a lot of it is because of fear. Fear, okay? We need to stop being afraid. I don't have a problem with you being concerned and using discernment. Do you understand the difference? I could be saying, look, I'm 60, 70 years old, whatever. I don't really get to drive in this kind of conditions usually. I'm a little concerned that I'm not going to handle it that well. I think wisdom says I should stay home. That's not fear. There's wisdom there and concern, all right? It's making a good, rational decision. That's why we give you the stream, so you don't have to be here if it's that kind of a situation, all right? Now, granted for you guys, the leadership here all grew up north, okay? Elder grew up north, Rabbi Tom grew up north, I grew up north. None of us is having an issue driving here, okay? So we'll get here without a problem. This will exist and it will broadcast, even in a blizzard. Because, there's nothing we haven't driven in and couldn't handle. We can handle it. But you don't have to. We just need this to go out and we need to do our duty. So we're not going to be like the other guys around who shut down, who again shut down. Okay? I don't understand why ministry shut down. They should find some way, somehow, to get here and provide what they're supposed to provide. That should tell you a lot, okay? Because they are shut down again, okay? I don't know why. To me, there's no justification. There's none. The one time we shut down is when everything, the government, the state, everybody said you had to shut down for COVID. That first week, we did shut down. The next week, we were here with the 5 or 6, 8 people we need to broadcast, and we broadcast. All right? We did that all through COVID. All right? We were not going to drop our duty to provide a service. Okay? Period.
Yes, one.
Well, thank you.
I just wanted to maybe share something.
Actually, wait, let me finish.
Yes.
One thing, I did call Elder this morning, though, and say that I was very concerned and afraid to get in my car so that he was teaching today. And he just was like, no. He didn't even say anything. He was like, all right, where's the rest of the joke? Because he knew I wasn't serious. I called him up and said, I looked at the roads and just thinking it's not really safe. I'm going to stay home. All right, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, that's the thing, Rabbi. This may help some people. I don't know. It's helping me for sure. When you started the teaching, you were, giving us the, just reminder of what HaSatan is and all that, right? And one of the things that you said was that this is like a lion trying to get you, right? And get you if you're distracted or weak emotionally.
Yes.
So I started doing something last week, and I've always journaled. I've always done that, but this is something specific that I've been doing that actually I was very happy to hear that it was research in the university where I went 25 years ago, and it's very specific. It has a time. It tells you exactly what to write about, how many times you're supposed to write, and it's helping me connect a lot of things. And I can even share the video if people want to know exactly how to do it. But I just praise Yahweh because the trials and the different things that occur in our lives, I think there are opportunities for us to figure out what can we learn from it, but also what are we gonna do about it? And I love how he will present, or he will allow for opportunities and resources in our life that we can actually take advantage of and use and to grow and to become like him. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to use it for this sort of thing. You are all, every one of you is unique, even though you may have some things in some ways that are similar to others. Okay, so you're not unique like in every single aspect, but you're unique. And what I want you to get from what Janet said, she said something about journaling, right? Well, journaling works great for some people. For some people. Not everybody's, that's their personality, where they're going to remember to write stuff down or feel comfortable writing stuff down or even go back and look at it ever again and that kind of thing. So the point is this, though. You need, and this is part of the leveling up, you need to have a way to observe yourself and to make note of or have something measurable or some way to track so that you can then learn from what you've observed so that you can make adjustments, okay? The observe, learn, adjust thing that I teach you guys, right? And so it's if journaling is a metric or something, a measurable thing that you can have where you're able to track certain things that you're journaling. I give you in the Level Up program sheets to track everything, okay? And you can make your own, you can do whatever you want. I just give you some ideas that have these things, all right? In working on my health, one of the things that I do is I weigh myself every day with the idea of not concerned necessarily of the weight, except that what is it telling me? Same thing if you're journaling. Journaling has two effects, actually. One effect is that you're getting something out of your system. So there is a therapeutic part to it. The other part is you're going to maybe have something that you can look back at and go, was there growth? What was I dealing with? Have I done anything to deal with that thing and fix it and learn and adjust from it, whatever. But all of you should find ways to track measurable things in the 7 areas of your life so that you know if you're going forward or backward, if you know if you're stagnant, if you know if you're making any kind of progress. Figure out a way to measure. So journaling may be great for you. It may be something you're like, I just can't see myself doing that. That would be me. I'm not a journaler, okay? But I do have ways to track things that I want things to be somehow measurable in all the areas. What can I do that's measurable so I can know if I'm actually making any progress? And so you have to have some way to track the measurables. You know, finances, maybe one of the best measurables, obviously, is you can just look at your bank account, right? As it goes up, goes down, or whatever it is. I mean, there are things that are easy to measure. And there are things that are not so easy to measure. How am I doing emotionally? Well, that's why I gave you a tracking sheet for like you to write down, like, you know, how you're feeling, okay? And so just find some way to track things. So journaling, if you're interested in journaling and some of the things, whatever she's saying, she can maybe give you the link or whatever it is, the thing that she's doing. That may work for you. My advice is, and guidance is, figure out what works for you, okay? Now, part of figuring that out might be finding out what works for other people and then trying it and see if it works for you too. Because if they're doing something that's working, it may work for you too, or it may not. It may be because you're different in some ways. So you may have to do something a little different because you're not them. But at least you find out what works for somebody else. It might be something that's worth trying, okay? So just kind of work that out.
I was thinking about the fear of like having a flight versus having a car ride and how irrational it would be really to think about a plane crashing compared to how percentage-wise, how many flights versus how many car crashes. Car crashes are a lot more common. But I think I read, or I was just thinking about how the differences for people psychologically, in a car, you have control over the car. You're the one driving. And
yeah, but wait. Hold on. That's true, but most of the people that end up really bad are not driving. It's a person in the passenger seat next to the driver who usually has the worst shot. So I'm just saying that's true, but it's not true.
Okay, it's true for if you're the one driving, I guess.
Then you have the implied perception of control.
Yes, and unless you're the pilot of the plane, which you could be, but most of the times you're not, or the co-pilot, then you don't have any control of the situation, and that would drive more fear just because you're not in control. And I was thinking about in our lives how we are hesitant to give up control because we're not in that place of being able to, in our minds, change the consequences, even though really what should be happening is we should have less fear because the person who's piloting our lives, Yahweh, has no chance of actually crashing the plane versus us trying to drive a car, I guess.
Okay, I mean, that's a good point to make. Look, but you can also take people that, I'm not afraid of getting in a car, but I'm afraid of driving through Atlanta or New York or Chicago. I'm afraid of driving through a big city. Why? You're driving. Driving is driving. No, it's not. There's all those cars. It's driving. Okay? And so we generate an emotional, again, delusional thing that says, this is more dangerous. This is more scary. This is more, we've convinced ourselves. There's no real basis for it, okay? But we've convinced ourselves. And that's where the problem is what we've convinced ourselves, all right? And so, again, it could be someone that's fine driving under certain conditions and not fine driving under other conditions. So yet they're still the driver. So it's not always, sometimes the people throw this stuff out there. And I don't disagree that I might feel better with my control over my car versus being a passenger in a plane. But a lot of people that are afraid of getting in cars don't drive. Okay, they're the passenger. Okay, and it's the driver that usually walks away. Okay, not the passengers. And that just happens all the time. So, just kind of keep that in mind. But the thing is, it's an irrational fear. Look, I've gotten in cars with people that a lot of people said, I can't believe you got in a car with that person. Some of you know who I'm talking about. And I wasn't afraid because if I was going to get killed, I was going to get killed. I leave it in Yah's hands. I'm not being reckless. I also know that person, as crazy a driver as he was, he didn't get a million accidents and he wasn't dead yet. I'm just saying, and so I just figured I'll make it through, and I did. And we didn't get hit or hit anybody. It's just what it is, okay? Or you could panic and be fearful or whatever. It doesn't get you anywhere. But what freedom you have when you're not afraid anymore, okay? It's so great to be free of all that. It really is. It's so great. It just is what it is. I mean, I felt that freedom when I was sick, the 4 or 5, whatever years, I forget how many years ago it is now already. 5, something like that. And I was sick. I didn't know if I was ever going to get my lungs working again. I didn't know if I was going to be off oxygen. I didn't know if I was ever going to be walking faster than, a 95-year-old looking man or whatever. But I mean, I just couldn't move. But I didn't have any fear. Elder can tell you when he saw me, I was about as peaceful and comfortable and just, it is what it is, okay? And there was a lot of freedom in that. I just was doing the best I could under the deal each day with what I had. And I wasn't depressed, I could have been. I wasn't frustrated or panicky, I could have been. Because there was no telling. Both my lungs had pretty well shut down. And it wasn't clear that they were ever going to clean up either, all right? And it was whatever it was. And it was slow. I was out for a good 2 months or plus, or whatever it was, okay? But I can tell you, I actually look back on it thinking, man, that could have been an emotionally challenging time, but I was free from fear. Okay, I'm not saying I was always free from fear, but at that point in my life, how great that was. Okay, it was not fun being in the condition, but I didn't have any fear. If anything, my wife had fear because she's watching me go through all of that, okay? Or concerns at least. Now, did I have any concerns? Probably, enough to say, I wonder if I'm going to get any better. I'm going to have to figure out a way to live like this. I'm going to have to figure out whatever, right? I came out here and scared you guys all. Came out here and sounded like this, and you guys were all afraid, okay? Now, just so you all know, I've said this before, I was given advice by everybody not to come out here, okay? And I did it anyway because I didn't realize how bad I looked. I just knew there was rumors going around that I was dead. And I thought I should come out and say, the rumors of my demise are a little exaggerated. Anyway, or whatever I said, something like that, right? And the rest of you looked at me and said, you look like you're dead. Or real close to it anyway. Look, fear is ruling in your life, then you are not living. If fear is ruling, you have to have that freedom. Some of you are like, well, how do I do that? Just let it go, okay? Just let it go. It is what it is. But what if I die? Then you die. What if I get paralyzed? Then you get paralyzed. What if this happens? Then it happens. My question would be, what if it doesn't happen and you missed out on all these things because all you did was panic and be afraid? If you have concerns, if there's wisdom to be applied, apply some wisdom as to whether you do something or not, but not fear, okay? Not fear. I thought there was wisdom in my coming out here in front of you guys like that. Shamash, Uncle Bob, my wife, Elder, everybody else thought it was probably a bad idea. But, you know, I thought, look, I'll show you guys I'm not dead. Okay? And then everybody started crying, seeing how bad I was. And I wanted to stay out there, and they were like, you better come back because you can't be out there this long. But, you know, but you could see I was at peace, right? That was the key. I wanted you to see that in adversity, in challenge, you know, you could be at peace. And I thought that was important, you know. And look, and I praise Yah now that I've got all this strength back, and I'm, you know, and the healing that's come through. And it wasn't some miraculous, just spontaneous thing. I mean, I went through a rehab period of time and different medications to help clean the lungs out and everything else, but they had just had all kinds of junk in there. No, it wasn't COVID, all right? I did have COVID a few months earlier, and it was one of those typical ones where you got it for like 2 days and it just seemed like a cold. Because when I test positive for the antibodies, but this was a pneumonia that was a bacterial pneumonia, so it wasn't COVID, but stuff had gotten in my lungs. And they had stopped working, pretty much. I was getting very little air. But I wasn't upset. My wife will tell you, I never got upset about it. I never got bitter about it, depressed about it, or anything else about it. I just slept when I slept and got up and did things, and the elder would come over with papers for me to sign. And I was still doing my job as best I could, you know, and under those conditions. And wanted to do more, couldn't do much. Couldn't go up or down a staircase, could barely get in a car. Because you don't have airflow and you can't do anything, let alone, it's hard to just put legs step in front of the other, okay? So it was tough, okay? It was tough, but I was at peace. And I liked that experience because now going forward, I'm even less worried about things happening because I now know I could have peace. And I didn't know how long I was gonna live even. I mean, it's hard to go forward knowing your lungs don't work, okay? I mean, they really weren't working. I was lucky they didn't put me on a ventilator. That would have killed me, okay? Thankfully, we had people around that, you know, were able to help me with things in a different way. All right, Chris.
Yeah, I think when you came up here, you did the opposite of the Sardis assembly, where they said they had a name that they were alive, but they were dead. Well, you had a name that you were dead, but you were alive.
That's right. No, seriously, Elder had told me there were people thinking that I was being kept hidden away and that we were hiding the secret that I had died or something, and because I hadn't been here for a couple of weeks, you know, and there really wasn't any big message about it or anything, and so people were starting to think that, you know, the ministry was hiding something. So I said, I'm going. Now that also goes to show you the strength of personality and leadership is that everybody else around me said no, and I said, no, I'm going. Help me get dressed and get in the car, and I'm going. And I'm gonna walk in that door, which I did, and I slowly made my way over to here, and I got to say, I'm not dead. Well, no, I said, I'm not dead. Because I couldn't even have enough breath to get a sound out, you know? So somebody like, why do you talk so loud? Because I can now. I couldn't when I was sick. I'm glad to still have a strong voice, okay? Hallelujah. All right.
So I had a question. I know you did the Ruach teaching at one point, and this 3 verse 1 talks about having 7 spirits. I just want to know, I know that's in Revelation and all, but you did like the teaching on intrinsic nature and all that, so.
Yeah, I'm not going into any of that.
Okay.
That's one of the many things that Revelation is going to touch on that I'm not going to go into right now. I want to keep this as, what's the word I'm looking for? Consistently focused on the message of the point, right? I want to keep it on the point. And unfortunately, if you go through a chapter of anything, you can always go off into other directions, and it's hard to not get distracted and want to go off there. So I try not to do that the best I can. I do it a little bit, but I try not to as much as I can, right? So Revelation is exceptional when it comes to how many of those there are that could be distracting and want to get you. But here's the answer. I'll give you this even easier. I have no idea. All right? There's your easy answer. I have no idea what he's talking about there. That doesn't mean I haven't thought about it, have guessed. I have no definitive answers to give you that I would feel comfortable giving you.
So, Rabbi, towards the end of the teaching, you briefly were speaking about passion. And I remember learning something once upon a time, but I wanted to verify it. So I looked it up on Google. And the root word for passion is the Latin verb pati, which means to suffer or to endure or to undergo. It entered English translation through the Latin passio, suffering, originally referring to the intense suffering of the Christ. Obviously, we use Mashiach.
Right.
The passion.
But that's where you get the movie, The Passion of the Christ.
Yes, the passion of the Christ had to do with suffering, not the modern context, which I guess is intense enthusiasm or desire or love for something. Because we tend to get these things all like, I don't know, just kind of all mixed up today. Like we're supposed to do the things from a point of making a decision and then deciding that we're just going to carry through it. And that is passion. Just like love, just like when you talk about love.
Well, yeah, but just remember that, language evolves based on usage. And so, that's why it's very, very, very challenging for us to go back and look at something written in the Tanakh in the Old Testament, or even in the Greek in the New Testament from 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, and think that we understand the word as it was used then, okay? Because language does evolve. Passion may have meant suffering. Now it means to be enthusiastically with all kinds of, I want to use the word passion, all kinds of that energy and love and energy in that direction. So it evolves, okay? The dictionary will give you older definitions and newer definitions based on usage, okay? As we use things, it's like my father, if you're old enough, you remember this, where your parents used to say, "Ain't's not a word." And then Webster put it in the dictionary. My parents were not happy when I showed them. It is now. But it wasn't when I was a kid, okay? But everybody was using it so much, they stuck it in the dictionary, because the dictionary doesn't define words. It defines how it's used. It tells you this is how the word has been used. This is how people have come to understand the meaning and usage of this word, okay? It's not like the definitive, this is, it's not the source of telling you what it is. It's saying this is how it's been used. And over time, that can change. And so that's important to understand language-wise, which is also why we probably have a bunch of things wrong on some levels when we start going to the translations, because it goes back so far. I mean, just look at English. If you go back 100, 200, 300 years, English has changed so much. Okay? You want to understand how hard it is? Go read some old English stuff. Go read some stuff written by, even go back to like Shakespeare or something. The language is not the same. Oh, well, that's British English, instead of like, it's English, all right? And yet, language evolves based on how we use the words.
Well, my whole point of that was the I guess the continual watering down of the language is partially responsible for us to, go back and, misinterpret or at least mislive what we know to be correct.
Yeah.
Under a guise of like, oh, we're doing this correctly because I have passion for my walk. Well, do you have passion for it? Are you actually willing to suffer against yourself for it?
Yeah. Hey, put the split screen back up. There you go. Just so you know, Michael and I are both living in the same town with the same weather. Short sleeves, sweater. My wife said to me this morning, "Are you going to wear a sweater?" I was like, no. And some of you might be like, why do you always wear short sleeves? Because it's warm in the building, okay? I wear layers for outside, but I generally am warm, all right? So my office is colder than most of the other offices. So I'm not gonna wear a sweater in here, okay? I know, you got a blanket over you. I'm comfortable, okay? Rhonda's covered up under a blanket. All right, okay? I own some really great sweaters, okay? But yet you never see me in them. Very rarely, my wife has talked me into it, so there are a few videos where you'll see me doing a teaching in a sweater, but it's too warm for me to be up here in a sweater. Although they did leave the room pretty cold today. So that I could have almost got away with it, but just so you know, here I am in my short sleeves. He did get the red memo though. So we're good. All right, anything else?
Well, I usually don't wear a sweater, but I had to go outside for a little bit today.
Because you're out on safety.
Yeah,
that's different.
yes,
You're outside.
But yeah, no, just the continual watering down of the language, really kind of gets in our way. And so that's why a long time ago you had encouraged people to, look up some of these words. And I remember we had Rocky used to be here. He used to do that a lot, and he would come to the mic and report what he read, and it kind of helped a lot of people. So, but thank you for the teaching, Rabbi. It was wonderful.
You are very welcome.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Hey, by the way, I actually thought it was cold enough this morning that when I brushed off a little bit of the driveway I needed to brush off so I could drive today, I actually pulled out my leather jacket. So those of you that know me know that doesn't come out unless it really gets cold. Okay, because it's not a thin leather jacket. This is like a biker 40-pound leather jacket. You know what I'm saying? And so first time my daughter saw me wearing it, she wanted me to put it on her. She probably was about 6 years old. I went to put it on her and she collapsed under the weight of this jacket. She was like, whoa. It's a heavy jacket. No cold is getting through this jacket. So anyway, I wear it like I think Shamash Rob wears a weight jacket when he walks. I'm gonna wear my leather jacket, Rob, okay? Because it weighs probably as much as the weight you carry around anyway.
All right, from Lily, it says, Rabbi, Revelation 3:18, I advise you to buy from me gold refined in the fire. Could that relate to Matthew 6:19, 21, where it says to store up treasures in heaven where it cannot be, quote unquote, destroyed?
Yeah, that could work. I mean, I kind of answered it a little bit, but it's not, again, talking about anything physical. So yeah, I think that'd be a good verse to match with in Matthew. Good job. All right, next.
Okay, from Olivia Dearth, says, Rabbi, how do we gain thick skin? I always think of thick skin as being callous.
Thick skin is an emotion. It's not a physical thing, okay? It's your ability to not allow the outside to affect the inside on that level, okay? It's the ability to not take things personally. See, at some point, it would help if you would realize that nothing's personal. But you think it is. It feels like it is. So taking it personally is where the thin skin comes in. So people can get to you, they can trigger you. This is thin skin, this is all emotional stuff, okay? And it all comes from you taking it personally. If you can understand that nothing is personal. Rabbi, how could you say such a thing? This is true. I didn't say that there's nothing there's nothing that feels personal. There's lots of things that feel personal. But if you can realize that it really isn't personal, if I come over to you and spit on you, you could take that personally, but it really isn't. There's something obviously going on with me that I would think it appropriate to do something like that. That's not a deficiency in you. Do you understand what I'm saying here? And if something is actually, you caused it, then why would you have a thin skin about that? It is your fault. So again, it has to do with your emotions. So strengthening your mind so your mind can regulate your emotions is how you thicken the skin. Okay? Strengthening your mind. Also, I made this up. I don't know if somebody else ever said it out there, but I thought I made it up anyway. I say things like this. To me, it's all mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Okay? I've been saying that for almost 50 years. I don't know when I made it up, but I was very young. Okay? Because people say, well, how do you do that? How come that doesn't bother you? It's mind over matter. I don't mind, so it doesn't matter. See, but if you think everything matters, then you mind, okay? Because you can reverse it, okay? If I think it matters, then I'm gonna mind. But if I don't mind, it's because it doesn't matter, okay? It's mind over matter. Okay, if I don't mind, then it doesn't matter. If I don't care about it, then it doesn't matter. You spit on me, so what? You spit on me. Turn the other cheek type of thing, right? Whatever it is, as long as you don't mind, it doesn't have any power. Well, I can't believe that this person, but so what? Why does it matter? Well, because they were rude to me, or they did this, or that, but so what? Why does that matter? There's something obviously going on in them that's not right, or they wouldn't have done it. Forgive them, Father, they don't know what they're doing. Person cuts you off doing some nonsense in the driving, you get all upset about it. Why? Clearly they don't know what they're doing. I mean, or they wouldn't have driven like that and cut you off and do whatever other reckless foolishness they're doing. So just be proud and glad and excited that Abba, you didn't get hit, all right? Instead, you're wanting to throw a fit. Can you believe this person, he just thinks he owns the road, blah, 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 blah. Why do you care? So the thick skin comes from stop caring about things you don't need to care about, okay? So we call someone thin-skinned when they can be easily drawn into an emotional reaction. Thick-skinned person, you could poke at them all you want. The skin is thick, it's not puncturing, right? So they're not gonna go, ow, which is what you want, some sort of reaction. Thin skin, you can poke it real easy, they're gonna react. Thick skin, poke all you want. I'm sitting there going, that's all you got? You know? So you just got to understand. It's an emotional challenge, thin skin. It's because you don't have enough strength of mind to regulate that. All right, next. So no, you're not being callous. All right, go ahead.
Okay, from Olivia Dirth. Says Revelation 3:8, you have little power, yet have guarded my word. What does the you have little power mean? I keep thinking authority.
Yes. I mean, it's talking about a group of people that say, look, you may not have any actual power to wield, but you're guarding my word. In other words, you may be at a time where governments are pushing you around, like when Rome came in and took over Jerusalem and other things like that. I mean, you have no power per se, but yet under all those conditions, you guarded my word. So yes, thinking authority is good. But think of authority from the difference between you wielding it over yourself, which is guarding the word, versus you wielding it over the situations around you and others. So when it says you have little power, meaning you have little to wield over the situation or others, yet you've shown you have power to wield over yourself.
From Livia again, James 1:10, being rich in humiliation versus being humbled. I get different pictures in my head for each. Are these supposed to be the same? I see one being done to you and versus the other you accepting something.
Okay, so again, I think I explained this, but the whole idea being that the lowly, okay, because they're being humble, they can boast in exaltation, but the rich, they're gonna end up with the humiliation. So what are they gonna boast about? They can talk about how they've been humiliated, okay? So I think I explained that in the teaching. Olivia, you may need to go back and re-listen to it. All right, next.
Okay, from Rachel, I think it's a Spino, but maybe I missed it, but how is toleration and endurance different? How are they the same?
Okay, I did explain this, but maybe I'll take another shot at it, okay? So tolerance is, when it's, okay, tolerance can be used in one of two ways. If you're just tolerating something that's all you're doing, versus tolerance is a part of endurance, okay? Because when you're enduring means you have a positive outlook, end result, goal that you're enduring because of, towards, okay? And you may have to tolerate a bunch of junk on your way there. If it's just tolerance, period, you're just sitting there letting whatever happen, and just dealing with it as best you can with no positive, forward-looking aspect of it, okay? So tolerance as a part of endurance versus tolerance by itself. Did that hopefully make that more clear, okay? Because as you're enduring, you're gonna have to tolerate a lot of junk. But you could tolerate all that junk with no positive hope or aspect or any other reason. You're just sitting there going, okay, I guess this is my life. It sucks. I'm just going to have to tolerate it. Or you can say, this is part of the journey to the kingdom. I'm just going to have to tolerate it because it's part of enduring until I get to the kingdom. Totally different perspectives. One is more fatalistic and the other one is more optimistic.
Okay, from the Peaceful Noggin says, thank you, Rabbi. On the topic of fear, may I ask what you think about the scripture, perfect love casts out fear? It has always been one of my favorites. Could it mean the love, trust, and faith in the Father overrides fear and earthly doubts? So it casts out fear by our choice to trust more in Him than our own fear.
All right, first of all, that's Michelle. Hi, Michelle. All right, look, the key here is everything you said is correct. Okay, everything you said is correct. The main thing is that when it says perfect love, okay, look at love as described in 1 Corinthians, in the love chapter, right, 1 Corinthians 13. You can also understand love like from the idea, if you love me, keep my commandments. And the commandments are part of that is to fear. Like the process of Deuteronomy 10:12 is to fear Yahweh. So we're to love him with everything. We're to fear him. Fearing him means that we don't fear anything else. We're trusting him. There's no doubt there. So everything you said there is correct. So I would go with that. So it casts out fear by our choice to trust more in him than our own fear. Well, it's not just trusting him more than our own fear. It's just that we're trusting in him. See, the two things can't reside in the same space. So it's not that you're trusting him more than your fear. You're choosing to trust him instead of your fear. Okay, you can't do both. You're either trusting or you're doubting. You're fearing or you're believing. Okay, you can't do both. So they can't reside in the same space. So if you're trying to have it reside in the same space, you're really back into that toss back and forth because you're going to trust in the fear and trust it. So you can't do both at the same time. So you're going to, at moments, be one way and then the other way, then the other way, then the other way. You go back and forth. All right, next.
Okay, this is going to be our last one, Rabbi. From Tom Lasardo, it says in James 1:4, could the word mature be another for the word perfect?
Okay, in my version, I read it as perfect. Okay, so you'll have to, just based on, if you're looking in the 2009, maybe that's why I'm looking in the 98, if you're using the ISR. But I read the verse as perfect. And let endurance have a perfect work so that you be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So I don't have the word mature in there at all, okay? Now, I could go to the Greek and see if mature makes more sense in part of there. They chose to put it as perfect. But if you think about mature means to grow into the fullness, like a plant matures, right? You as a person mature. You're growing up into the fullness of the intention. So calling it perfect, which also has to do with the idea of the completeness or the fullness of what it was supposed to be. So either word pretty much says the same thing. But my translation uses perfect in those places, not mature. That doesn't mean that this is right. It's just I'm reading out of the older version. Okay? Anybody have an 09? Does the 09 say mature? It says perfect in the 2009. So whatever translation you're using you're just using the wrong translation. No, I'm kidding. We had somebody get in touch with us. They were all mad at the translation we were using. I said, I just pick, it doesn't matter. There's no perfect translation. This is the one I use. I like it better than most. And as you often hear, I do my own tweaking of the translations on many verses as I look up the words and figure that I think maybe it's not translated so ideally, right? So I do that. But this person didn't want to talk to us at all because they didn't like the translation we were using. It's like, fine, go somewhere else. Anyway, next. See, if I was thin-skinned, that would bother me. All right, fantastic. So that's the end of that. Hopefully you got something out of that.